Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right. Fired up. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yes. Today's Wednesday, September 2nd. 244 days into the new year, 121 days left. We are live from the City of Angel Studios in Burbank, California. COA Vapor. The makers of Fade to Black e-juice. It's called Fade or Lose. Just go to the COA banner at jimmychurchradio.com. You can use the promo code Jimmy for the Fade or Not special. Get yourself some free shipping. The link is right there. Go click. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network and KGRA, the planet. I'm your oh so humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Let's go. Let's do this, man. Two things before we start the show tonight. I want to personally thank everyone who made our sandbox on Twitter last night a very special place. It was amazing. Thank you. And second, Tom Danheiser, the producer of Coast to Coast, is not feeling well. I sent him a text just before the show tonight, and he managed to reply. And I'll just say this. Tom, get better, brother. Our thoughts are with you. There you go. All right, with that, let's get this show cracking. Tonight, we have very special guest Larry Hulcom with us. His new book, Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR through Obama, is out. Check it out. How do we top last night? Well, we're going to give it our best shot tonight with Larry Hulcom. And tomorrow, special broadcast with David Hatcher Childress. There's only one way we would bump Fade or Night. There's only one way, and it's with David Hatcher Childress. So, wow, 4 back-to-back blockbuster shows this week. Just, wow. Last night, and I was contemplating today. Yes, I do contemplate once in a while. The significance of last night's show. There was a lot of info dropped last night. It was one thing after another. Great email today, by the way. Too much of it, actually. I can't go and read through all of it. But, wow, everybody got what was flowing. And so today, I was just thinking, man, Vaughn said this. I'm talking about Vaughn Setyan, our guest last night. This. That was a historical show. It was an important show. And again, I want to thank everybody in Twitter last night. You guys were just, Twitter's always a special place. Last night, absolutely incredible. And I woke up today and, I've got to set up the show. I've got to do that. I got to research. I got to do that. I got work to do. And all I could do today was daydream and think and go back and check and about last night's show. It was incredible. So it's up on the podcast. And if you missed last night's show, you need to go back. Von Setyan. Show number, what are we at today? It's 316. Last night was 315. Go and listen to that show. Absolutely amazing. All right. Got a lot to do. Let's get to all of it because tonight I want to get to Larry as soon as we can. And so let's go. Let's get the show cracking. The MUFON Symposium, don't forget, today is September 2nd. MUFON Symposium is September 23rd through the 27th at the Hotel Irvine right here in Southern California. Go to MUFON.com, MUFON.com. Tickets and information. Saturday night, I will be hosting the Hangar 1 UFO Files meet and greet with the cast and crew. The producers of the show are going to be there. Camera people, sound people, producers, executive producers, the writers of the show are going to be there, as well as all of the MUFON researchers, star team members. They'll be there. Dwight Eckets is going to be there. Mike Baer is going to be there. Melissa Tittle's going to be there. I'll be there, and we've got a couple of other surprises. Okay, so that's going down Saturday night. It's coming up quick. Make plans to be there. You don't even look if you just want to go to the symposium and hang out. You can. There's vendors area. There's going to be some other stuff there. You can just do a drive by and come hang out with us. And if you're going to be there, let us know on Twitter, and we'll let you know where we're going to have our little Fade or Not get together. Okay, and that'll be sometime Saturday. And there you go. All right. And then the Skyfire Summit, Travis Walton will be coming up November 5th through the 8th in Heber, Arizona. And again, extraordinary lineup there. Travis Walton, David Hatcher Childress, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Lee Spiegel, Tracy Torme, Ben Hansen, James Fox, Lynn Katai, Jennifer Stein. No Torres is going to be there. Alejandro's going to be there. And he's probably even, if you go check out Alejandro, he's probably down one more shirt size. And I'm not joking. And so that goes down November 5th through the 8th. Lots of stuff going down right now. There you go. All right. And also, Fade to Blog. Thank you for everybody that has responded, that wants to write for Fade to Black and our website, jimmychurchradio.com. You can email Rita at jimmychurchradio.com if you would like to come and write for us and participate in Fade to Blog. You get your own blog. You get your own comment section. It's your own little universe where you can go and whatever's on your mind, you can go blog to the world. And one thing that's really cool about coming to write for us is we have a lot of traffic on that website. Thousands and thousands every single day by the hour. Go look at the rankings of that website. Just go see what I'm telling you what. So if you want to blog and you want people to read what you write, let us know. We'll hook you up. That's Fade to Blog. Email Rita at jimmychurchradio.com. With that, let's go. Let's just get this show cracking. Where am I? Today. Okay, let's have some fun. I want to have some fun right now. Today, Keanu Reeves is 51 years old, a.k.a. otherwise known as Neo, 51 years old. Salma Hayek today is 49. She makes the cut because of From Dusk Till Dawn. Harvey Levin of TMZ is 65. Looks every bit of 65. Looks 75. Whenever you watch TMZ, Harvey, sue me. I'll just say it right now. You kind of creep me out, man, when you're talking to the team there at TMZ. And I know a few of those cats, too. All really fine. It's a cool team. But they're all 80 years younger than you. And it's kind of, you can't act hip with hip people when 40 years, 50 years separates you from your team. It's just kind of creepy. But TMZ seems to break all the news today, don't they? Everything breaks through TMZ. Everybody wants to break it through TMZ. Harvey Levin, today, 65, built an empire. Our dead guy's birthday today. A true moment of silence, if you please. There you go. Astronaut Krista McAuliffe, 1948 to 1986, died at the age of 37. She was scheduled to become NASA's first teacher in space, but was tragically killed in 1986 when the Challenger exploded. She was chosen for the STS-51L mission from 11,000 applications from teachers around the United States. And there you go, age of 37. And that morning I will never forget because I had to drive my roommate, Daryl, to work in Pasadena. I had to get up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, pile him in the car, made sure he'd get to work on time, got to work on time because, you know, he needed to pay the rent. And the only way that was going to happen is if I drove him to work myself. And I did that, you know, like I did every day. And I got back and turned on the TV, was making coffee, and I saw that live. And changed the country, changed me. Innocence was gone. Krista McAuliffe, 37. Wow. Happy birthday. Okay. With that, let's have some fun. Twitter. What is your favorite quote from The Matrix? Yes. What is your favorite quote from The Matrix? You know my choice. You do. But The Matrix is unique in our generation in that I have the script for The Matrix right here on one of my screens, and I was going through it today. And I think I have memorized the entire script. I have. I have. And so have you. It's very unique in our generation. Every generation's got one film, right? And for us, is it The Matrix? I think so. What's your favorite quote from The Matrix? And you know what? I got 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to do mine. This is my favorite quote, and this is mine from Agent. What's his name? Here we go. It seems that you've been living two lives. One life, you're Thomas A. Anderson program writer for a respectable software company. You have a social security number, pay your taxes, and you help your landlady carry out her garbage. The other life is lived in computers, where you go by the hacker alias Neo and are guilty of virtually every computer crime we have a law for. One of these lives has a future, and one of them does not. And he shuts the book, the file, slap. That's mine. Now, what's yours? What's your favorite quote from The Matrix? This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses. It seems that you've been living two lives. Bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Tonight, Larry Hulcom is with us. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue?
Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fader-Knots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. This is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Nobody went there. No, and it seems like we have left bacon in the past. I think now there is no spoon. Well played, Fader-Knots. Well played. There is no spoon. Yeah, with the Mars images yesterday, if I read that quote one more time yesterday, that was absolutely hilarious. But there it is today. Yes, we're all on the same page. I think we should go right there. There is no spoon. That's the new word, spoon. It won't replace Gobekli Tepe, but man, I love that word. Spoon. On this day in spoon. Let's do some Fader spoons. Spoon. All right, let's go. I'm in a good mood. Oh, man. And when you, it helps, you come off a show last night and at number 2, Jamaican Blue Mountain Coffee. Why is Jamaican Blue so freaking smooth? It's so complex, and you can just taste. You can taste everything, man. You can taste the worm poop. I mean, you can taste everything. And you can even taste the spoon that I used to stir it. All right, let's go. On this day in history, 31 BC, the Battle of Actium. You remember, when off the coast of Greece, Roman leader Octavian beat the crap out of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Hey, where what's crazy about that battle? Shouldn't there be like 3,000 ships at the bottom of that, that little bay right there off the coast? And before it ended, before the loss, Antony and Cleopatra snuck out of there, sailed through the mess, and went back to Egypt on this day, 31 BC. Fader facts. This one, I got a bunch of Fader facts today, but I went with Renee. One with Renee's. Everybody else that sent me fader facts today, they were all good. But check this out. A career builder study found that 1 in 3 American workers feel bullied, as in being yelled at in front of coworkers, being falsely accused of mistakes that you didn't make, others taking credit for your work, and the application of double standards. So I get it. I do. But hasn't this been going on since time itself? I mean, this has been going on for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years. Are we that sensitive in the workplace today that suddenly everything that has been going on forever, isn't this kind of stuff? You know, I'm not making light of it, but then again, I am. I mean, isn't that just part of working? You know, that is. You know, you just got to be better than be just the best that you can be. That's all. When you get accused of stuff or other people take credit for your work or all that double standard, that just means that you're better than them, and that's why it goes down. Always remember that. Here's some of the news that you know nothing about. Dean Jones. Yeah, I posted this on our Facebook page today. I had to do it. I don't post there often, but I did this today. Dean Jones, he was the go-to guy over at Disney forever, whose films included The Love Bug, The $1 Million Duck, That Darn Cat, The Shaggy DA. He passed away yesterday at the age of 84. And I posted a clip today of Dean singing in the studio, and it's a little piece of a documentary. And so go check that out on our Facebook page. It's pretty cool. Dean Jones passed away yesterday. Let's see. The folks at California-based Hoverboard Technologies have come out with a skateboard that works kind of like a Segway, and kind of when you're riding it feels like a hoverboard. And the pictures we've posted, you can go check it out also on our Facebook page. It's a skateboard, looks like a skateboard, but it's got one wheel in the middle of it, like a Segway wheel. It's big. It's like a foot, in diameter, a foot, big fat wheel in the middle. You put 1 foot on the front, 1 foot on the back behind the wheel. But this thing goes up to 16 miles an hour. And just like a Segway, it's got an onboard computer that keeps you balanced and upright and can detect when you want to turn left or right. It check this. It goes 16 miles an hour with that gyroscope. Now, they say it's not as easy as a Segway to ride. You got to learn a little bit. There's a little ramping up, so to speak. But once you do, a full battery charge will give you a range of 12 miles. Now, at 16 miles an hour, you do the math. That means you got 45 minutes of 16 miles per hour. Death-defying action going down. But it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. Check it out. The pictures are amazing. Now, I've got to go here. I'm a little bit confused on a couple of things. The search for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane. Now, they're saying now that it's thousands of miles off track once again. German scientists are pointing to the barnacles on the Boeing 777, which they say that the barnacles aren't part of that part of the ocean. You guys are way off. The scientists have suggested that the search be refocused closer north of the equator in the southern Indian Ocean, back to where they were looking before. Now they're way up north and west. And on top of that, a Spanish company which manufactures the wing parts for the Boeing 777 jets, they are now casting doubts over that flaperon that was found. And they're saying that they can't prove anything. French investigators had hoped that serial numbers found in the flaperon will be matched with records from the Spanish company to confirm that the debris was from MH370. but now it's proving impossible. And I'm quoting from them directly. How many flaperons from a Boeing 777 are floating around in the Indian Ocean? There's only one. It's insane to me. It's like we're right back, right when we had some hopes that this thing was going to get put to bed. Now they just want to go into denial on all fronts. How can we be off by 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles? Don't know anything. This is it's just frustrating. But here's some pretty cool news. At 12:37 Eastern Time today, ETA, the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft lifted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan and launched the 500th manned space rocket into orbit today. 500th. The Soyuz rocket lifted off with Russian Sergei Volkov and Kazakh Aydin Amitov, and the first Danish astronaut. Notice I said astronaut, not cosmonaut. The first Danish astronaut, Andreas Mogensen. The 500th. Man. You might be surprised to learn that. Write this down. Get your pen out. You might be surprised to learn that a recent national poll found that over 71% of Americans believe in miracles. 42% of Americans believe that ghosts exist. 41% think that extrasensory perception, telepathy, is possible. And 29% believe in astrology. Other polls recently have indicated that the public belief in things like conspiracy theories or other pseudoscientific phenomena are equally prevalent. For example, 21% of Americans think the government is hiding aliens. 28% of Americans believe that a mysterious secret elite power is plotting a new world order. And 14% of Americans believe in Bigfoot. That's right. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Larry Hulcom is with us. We come back after this very short break. We'll have Larry in the batter's box. Excited. Don't forget, tomorrow night, no Fader night. Take that off the schedule. Tomorrow night, we have David Hatcher Childress right here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Bespoke Radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA. The Planet. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping, and I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best, and that the flavors were something that I could create myself, and we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not Special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go Beckley Tappy.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile Talk Radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Attention, all Fade or Not. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Yeah, that's right. How do we top last night's show? Well, we do it with Larry Hulcom. That's how we do it. Let's do this. Larry Hulcom's introduction to the world of ufology came in the late 1950s after reading Major Donald Kehoe's Flying Saucers Are Real and Flying Saucers from Outer Space. He found them in his high school library. After taking early retirement in 2006, Holcombe started to work on The Great River Disclosure, a thriller based on his theories of the UFO phenomenon derived from his 50-plus years of study. Larry continues to believe that Roswell and the bungling of crash retrieval events was a defining moment in the development of the United States policy towards the UFO issue. His current nonfiction book is The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama, which has just been optioned by Sony Pictures and will start its international editions, starting with Italy and Japan. I would like to welcome to the program, for the first time, Mr. Larry Hulcom. Larry, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm delighted to be with you, Jimmy, and I've listened to you often and appreciate your fine work and delighted to be on the show with you.
Well, the honor is all mine, and you know, Larry, I start off every show with a guest that is with us for the first time, with a little disclaimer. So I'll do it now. Larry, this is just you and I sitting in my living room having a conversation between friends, and wherever the conversation goes, it goes, and wherever it ends, but we're going to end as friends, and let's do this. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Oh, 50 years, Larry, before I ask the obvious question, and maybe I can even avoid it, which is, what got you into this, and we jump back 50 years ago. I think what I would rather do is actually jump back 50 years ago and talk about what was going on 50 years ago and not necessarily what was going on with you, because they were both going on at the same time. And, when we bring up Kehoe and we talk about the flying saucers are real or flying saucers from outer space, it is an appreciation of the past that intrigues me, and I'm a student of the game. I am all over it. So I would like to jump back, and I talk about the library reference too all the time. I used to do the same thing. When I went into a library, I went to the U section for UFOs. That's what I did. And Flying Saucers Are Real and Flying Saucers from Outer Space by Kehoe were two books that were required reading for ufology and ufologists back in the 50s. And they are, how do I want to say this correctly? They should be textbooks today in school. And that's the way that they were regarded back then, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Although there had been, by 1960, there had been a lot of disinformation that had been put out by the Air Force after the Robertson panel report, or the Durant report, or the Robertson panel, after the great 1952, July 1952 UFO flap over D.C.
Right.
And the Robertson panel was organized, and they had some very good people come in and testify, but they pretty much ignored the testimony of a number of people, including the experts from the Navy photographic interpretation outfit that reviewed the Tremonton, Utah film, I think it was, that said that what this film showed was self-illuminating objects. They weren't balloons, they weren't birds, they weren't airplanes. They didn't know what they were. And the panel of scientists thanked him very much for spending 1,000 hours researching this film, and said in their report that they were birds. So the great UFO cover-up, I think, started with the Robertson panel that in the Durant report, which said we need to start showing that, or telling the public that using disinformation to the public to take this out of the public mind as something legitimate. And so I think that's where the cover-up began. But certainly the years, Jimmy, from the 1940s up through the 1960s to the Condon Report were what I consider the golden years of flying saucers. I like the term flying saucers. Ufology or UFOs takes in such a broad field, and I like to refer to real sightings as flying saucers rather than UFOs. A lot of my very good friends in ufology like to state that UFOs, 95% of UFOs can be explained. It's the 5% that can't be explained that we're interested in. Well, that's true. That's a fact. But I look at it as the 95% being 100% of objects that are prosaic, and the 5% being 100% of real sightings of what I call flying saucers. That is the potential of craft being extraterrestrial. So,
yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. As a matter of fact, Larry, consider that stolen. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that every day for the rest of my life. That's actually a very, very, very unique way to look at it and to speak about it.
Well, help yourself. It's
that's
but I think it separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. It's just that when you tell in my book, I sort of direct the book to the people that I call the casual, the casual observer. That is, people that are very interested in the subject, but really don't have a great deal of knowledge or background into it. And I've used the thread running through presidential administrations to try to show the casual observer that this is a very real subject. This was a subject that was and has been looked at and been very important to each presidential administration, and to try to show the background, the background of the Air Force in the early years in late 1940s into the 1950s and late 1960s, and how much real discord there was within the Air Force between those that thought that the UFO question was something very real and probably extraterrestrial, and those that didn't think it was, and those that didn't think it was were the ones that had done no research whatsoever.
You know, and that's an interesting point, because with most books on the subject today are going to a boutique publisher or self-publishing route, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that tends to be the flow. But you somehow garnered the interest of not only a major publishing house, but the backing that comes along with it. What was it that enabled you to get a major publisher to get behind the book? How did you present the idea to them for them to go, you know what, this is, because there's only so many now that get published every year through major publishers, if any at all, and this one is significant. How did you pull that off?
A lot of luck.
That's a good answer, actually.
I pulled it off, Jimmy, because I had, and we can talk about this later, but I had. In doing research for my novel that you mentioned, I wanted it to be as accurate as possible. And in researching, I watched a number of documentaries. Most were poorly done, but I came across one documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future, that the writer of the documentary, Robert Emenegger, was still alive, and long story, but I contacted him because I thought that the documentary was absolutely extraordinary, because it apparently had government backing, and it in essence, if you watch the entire documentary, you got the feeling that the government was backing it, and that the theory that UFOs were extraterrestrial was very real. And I was fascinated by this, so that's how I got into it and started doing some research, made contact with Bob Emenegger. He started feeding me a lot of data. I ended up spending a night at his home, retirement home in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He had been a very successful advertising executive in Los Angeles with Gray Advertising. One of his major clients was Bank of America, and the background story of the making of this documentary involved the Nixon administration, Emegger's association with H.R. Bob Haldeman, who he was a fraternity brother of H.R. Bob Haldeman, who was Nixon's chief of staff, and the involvement of the Nixon administration in making this documentary or supporting this documentary. And I saw the idea of a book forming. So I contacted several literary agents, and I'm sure, as you well know, getting a literary agent, a new author to get a literary agent, is just about as difficult as flapping your arms and flying to the moon, as I've said a number of times.
It's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, they get like 400 queries a day or something like
an
that.
hour. Yes.
It's hard. It's just terribly hard to get one. But I had one, and it was a major agency in New York. I don't mind mentioning Foundry Media. and one of the partners, Peter McCurdy, got back to me, which stunned me, and said, I think you've got a good story here, but it's not enough to make a complete book out of. If you'd like to take the time and spend the time and the work to write a book proposal, I'll send you an outline on how to do that. And I said, sure, I will. He said, I think you need not only to include the Emegger story and the story of the documentary, but include all modern presidents. And I thought, gee, that's almost impossible. You just can't get information on presidents about UFOs. It's almost impossible to get. But the more I thought about it, I saw a thread running from president to president. So I started working on a book proposal. After, I guess, 3 months and 18,000 words, I sent this book proposal back to my agent, or who wasn't my agent then, is now, and didn't hear from him for a couple of months, and wrote to him, and he said, I put it out to several publishers, and we've got several that are interested.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and then he got back to me and he said, I've got an offer from St. Martin's Press.
Oh, man.
And here's the offer, and he laid the offer out to me, and here's what the advance will be, and blah, blah, blah. And I can't believe it, but yeah.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, you punched your lottery ticket. Let me say this. Did this enable you to get on planes and get out and do all of the research, at the presidential libraries, maybe D.C.? I'm sure that's what happened. Yourself, you went out and were able to collect this data yourself instead of surfing the net and regurgitating other information that was already out there. You put boots on the ground. Yep.
I spent a number of hours in presidential library archives working with the archivists. The Johnson Library in Austin, I was there for 2 days. The George H.W. Bush Library in College Station, a great deal of information from the Ford Library. I got some good stuff between Donald Rumsfeld, letters from Donald Rumsfeld to Dr. J. Allen Hynek, back and forth when Rumsfeld was chief of staff to Jerry Ford, the Kennedy Library. So yeah, it's hard work, but it's fun. I really love going in presidential libraries and going into the archives. And let me say this: the archivists, I was very apprehensive at first, because you go into a presidential archive and you see an archivist and you say, "Can you give me information? What information do you have on presidents and UFOs?" They're going to look at you like you're a disease in a petri dish.
Right.
But that wasn't the case. They were completely everyone was completely helpful and gave me all the information they had and helped me in every way they could. It was a wonderful experience. If one part of the government works well, it's archivists in presidential libraries, or archivists in the National Archives, for that matter, because they don't look at you. They don't glare over their glasses at you. They were tremendously helpful, and I love going to presidential archives and looking through the documents. I guess I'm a snoop, but but you're not going to find a smoking gun there, because when you get on a trail that looks like it's going somewhere, you'll pull a file out of one of the boxes they bring to you, and the data has been redacted. And you can file Freedom of Information request, or you can file a request with the library to have that information declassified and given to you. And I've done that a number of times, and I get a letter back from the archive that said, we appreciate your request, but we are non-responsive to your request.
Right. Did anything get unredacted, by the way? Did you get at least
nothing?
Nothing. Yeah, that's I would expect that. Now let's go back to Emenegger really quick, because this is it's a large part of the book. It's certainly the foundation of the book. But that documentary and Bob Emenegger are kind of have been lost in UFO history. And the documentary itself, which I have, you know what, seriously, Larry, in the last year, I've watched it probably a half a dozen times. You know, I go back and I watch it, and I'm shocked and I'm amazed. It's one of the best, if not the best, UFO documentary that's ever been made. But,
I agree.
Yes, but it's also, you know, it's done so long ago that unless you know about it or hear about it, you're not going to go out and seek it out. And Rod Serling, right? Yeah, it was Rod. Yeah, it was Rod Serling.
Rob Serling was the
narrator.
And
it was done. It was a big budget, and but it's kind of lost in history. So I will suggest to the audience right now, after the show tonight, you're going to want to do that. Go watch it. It's called UFOs Past, Present, and Future. And it's all over YouTube, and so you can find it and go and watch it. But this documentary was set out from the very beginning to be an official government-sanctioned and backed documentary, and that's why Bob Emenegger was pulled in to do it. And it's got that flavor and feel from the beginning to the end of the documentary. Why do you think, and you know how special it is, and I'm certainly playing it up right now, but I'm being serious. Why do you think it's just kind of gotten lost in the shuffle as time has gone by?
That I don't know. I can't answer that, because it's a mystery. That's a mystery to me. I don't know why that happened, except perhaps the time frame that it came out in the 70s, people were not interested or as interested in the subject as the general population seems to be now. It just came out at the wrong time. I don't know, but I firmly believe that the documentary had the support of the Nixon administration, and that the Nixon administration and President Nixon was on the verge of some level of disclosure of UFOs or an extraterrestrial presence.
Do you think it was because of his associations outside of the White House, you know, Jackie Gleason and his other UFO buddies, that maybe that they were pushing Nixon to move forward with disclosure? And all of this was pre-Watergate, and Nixon was...
Well, you're exactly right. It was pre-Watergate, and yes, I think that that Nixon's association with Jackie Gleason played a major role in it. Gleason was, there's no question, Gleason was a strong believer in an extraterrestrial presence. You know, before he moved to Miami, he had a house in upstate New York, somewhere, Peekskill, perhaps. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. But the house was built in the shape of a flying saucer.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
He had outbuildings that he called the scout ships.
Right.
I've got photographs of them. Someone that read my book snuck onto the property after Gleason moved away, and someone else bought the house and the property, and took photographs of the house and the outbuildings, which looked like little flying saucers.
Yeah, flying saucers on stilts, on landing legs.
Yeah, and sent them to me. I wish I had them for the book. I would have included them in the book if the photographer had given me his permission. But Jimmy, it's hard to believe that the president and Gleason were very close, and it's hard to believe or not to believe that being as close as they were, and Gleason was really upset that he felt the government was concealing a great deal of data on UFOs, and he thought the government should release this data. So it's hard to believe that Gleason, as close as he was to Nixon, didn't bend Nixon's ear.
Yeah,
just think if you or I were close to the President of the United States, we would be saying,
Yeah, that's all we would talk about.
Let this get this data out. So they were very close, and I think that's a factor that played into it. I think that Nixon had a fascination with it. Remember that Nixon was a vice president under Eisenhower for 8 years, and Eisenhower, I believe, was deeply involved in the UFO issue. So it's hard to believe that Nixon, as vice president, wouldn't have been privy to at least some of that information.
Well, and the other aspect, Larry, and we're going to be up against a break here,
Sure.
So we're going to do that in about 60 seconds. The other thing is that we need to drive home about Richard Nixon he was up to his neck in security, CIA issues on so many different covert levels around the world, dealing with all kinds of things, going back to the Kennedy assassination. And so his knowledge of things that were very, very confidential and black inside of the government, he was involved with going back to the late 50s. And he was well respected going through the White. He was reelected, and he was until Watergate, he was the man. And
he was reelected by an almost historic majority of the population.
Landslide, yes.
Yeah, and in foreign affairs, I don't know that we've had a president in modern times that knew foreign affairs as well as Richard Nixon.
That's right.
You can love him or hate him, but in foreign affairs, he had no peers. He was, and I've got a lot of stories on Nixon in foreign affairs, but he knew it well.
Larry, we're going to be up against the break, so let me stop you there. And when we come back off of the break, it's the backstory behind Emegger and the documentary. That's the interesting one. It's not necessarily the documentary itself. It's the 600 feet of UFO footage that he was promised and what he went through on so many different levels. Tonight, Larry Hulcom is with us. We'll be back right after this. His new book. We're going to go through everything, but we're going to finish this up with Bob Emenegger when we come back. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California.
expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONsymposium.com. That's MUFONsymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. That goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Pulling up the chair here, getting comfortable. The studio is dark. Turn down your lights. Be just like me. Tonight we have very special guest Larry Hulcom with us. His new book, Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR Through Obama. And before the break, Larry, we were talking about the significance of Bob Emenegger and his documentary and what the backstory that makes this so intriguing. So when you watch the documentary, if you know the backstory, that's when your adrenaline gets racing, because it was his world. He was promised 600 feet of footage of a flying saucer landing at an Air Force base, and he went through the craziest cloak and dagger chasing down the promises of meetings with top Air Force officials and the Pentagon and the White House and the CIA. Everybody was involved, and these promises were made that he could use this actual footage shot by the Air Force in this documentary, and disclosure was about to happen. And that's the backstory. And let's expand on that.
Well, Bob was, as I said earlier, a very successful advertising executive with Gray Advertising in Los Angeles. And he had been a fraternity brother of Bob Haldeman, H.R. Bob Haldeman. And, of course, Haldeman was Nixon's chief of staff. Nixon had, in his first term, as we touched on, was very popular. He had open relations with China, and he had made detente with the Soviets, with Brezhnev. I guess a lot of people could argue about this, but he had made the world a safer place for a period of time. And in his bid for re-election, he was asked by the committee to re-elect the president, which has become known as creep, but by the news media. But anyway, he was asked by the committee to re-elect the president if he would come on board as a media consultant. And he talked it over with his wife, Margaret, but he went to a meeting in Los Angeles with the committee, and they asked him to come on board as a media consultant, and he said that he would do so. And what it amounted to was they wanted him to make a documentary that would, a scientific documentary. And he and his film partner, who owned a film studio in Hollywood or Los Angeles, Alan Sandler, Sandler Productions, got together and said, "Okay, we'll make a documentary." And they were flown around the country to various military installations to look at dolphins being trained for underwater demolition, dogs being trained for spying or intelligence gathering. They went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We're taking to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to see some very highly classified laser work being experimented on. They ended up at Norton Air Force Base, which housed the film depository, if you will, for the Air Force. And they were taken into what was described to them as a clean room. That is a room within this building that was clear of any listening devices of any type. And the director of this film depository for the Air Force, Paul Chartle, said, "Look, how would you like to make a film on UFOs, extraterrestrials?" And Emenegger was taken back. He said, he told me, he said, "I didn't know anything about flying saucers or UFOs. All I knew about it was what was on the front of tabloid papers my wife brought home from the supermarket." And so Paul Charles says, "If you'll take on this project, if this will be your film project, a documentary on UFOs, we'll give you 600 feet of 16 millimeter film taken at Holloman Air Force Base." And the year, I forget exactly the year that the landing took place, but it was in the late 60s, early 70s. And the film shows a UFO landing at Holloman Air Force Base. And we'll give you that film to use as the explosive finish to your documentary. They were stunned. He and Sandler were stunned. So they were sent to Washington to meet with some Air Force personnel at the Pentagon. When they arrived at the Pentagon, they were taken into a room by several men dressed in the dark suits, and sort of browbeat, told, look, there are a lot of people that are against this. So the best thing you can do is get back on your plane and fly back to Los Angeles and forget this whole thing. Well, Bob Emenegger is a very mild-mannered fellow, and as I maybe mentioned, he and I have become good friends. He's in his 80s now, but still sharp as a tack. And but Sandler was something different. He was a no-nonsense sort of guy, and he jumped up and said, in essence, pardon my English, but I'm tired of this damn foolishness. Give me a telephone, and we're going to call the White House. They had contacts in the White House. I'm going to call the White House and get this thing straightened out right now. We didn't come here on our own. We were directed here by the White House, and I'm going to get this mess straightened out. Well, at that point, the mood changed, and the guys became very nice, and they ushered them up to the office of Colonel William Holcolmbe, who at the time was head of Air Force Public Relations. Well, Holcolmbe met them outside of his office and sort of gave them the same spiel that they'd heard before. You're messing in areas that are highly sensitive and what have you, but then ushered them into his office, shut the door, had them sit down, and started relating his own UFO experience as a pilot flying a B-26 or what have you over the southeastern United States when he had an experience with a UFO or flying saucer. And after some conversation, he said, the person you really need to talk to is Colonel George Weinbrunner, who's head of the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patt. So they were flown to Wright-Patterson, taken down, as Bob related to me, in the below-ground catacombs of the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson, and went into Colonel Weinbrunner's office. And Bob said he walked right up to Weinbrunner's desk and said, Colonel, thank you for having us, but what I want to know is this story about the film that you're going to give us of a UFO landing, an extraterrestrial craft landing at Holloman Air Force Base, is that factual? And he said, Weinbrunner looked at him for a moment, got up from his desk, went over to a chalkboard, drew a picture of a jet fighter on it, and he said, this is a MiG-21 or whatever, MiG whatever. And he said, we don't know a damn thing about it. We don't know anything about it. They know everything about all our aircraft, but we don't know anything about their aircraft. And he went on like that for a period of time, discussing that they really didn't know what the Russians had, but the Russians knew everything we had. In the course of the conversation, he walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a book and opened it up and handed it to Bob Emenegger. And Bob said he looked at it, and it was, the inside cover, it was addressed to George Weinbrunner from his friend Alan Hynek. Right. And the book was on UFOs.
And all of this wasn't spoken out loud.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing was said out loud.
Right. The conversation.
This was all while he was discussing Russian aircraft. He took the book back, put it in the shelf, continued on for a few minutes about the Russian aircraft, thanked them for coming, and issued them out to the office. And they left bewildered. But Bob told me, he said it was clear to me that, first of all, Weinbrunner we felt that Weinbrunner knew that his offices were bugged.
Yeah, everything was bugged.
Everything was bugged.
So he
didn't want to mention it.
Right.
But we left in showing us that book, told us that it was factual.
That was his way of answering the question without saying it out loud.
Without mentioning a word of it, right.
Totally interesting. And so did Bob ever see the footage?
No. What happened was they went back and started production. They hired Rod Serling. They hired Burgess Meredith, Jose Farrar, Jacques Vallée is in the documentary. They had the whole production set up to go. They got financing from, I think it was John D. MacArthur, who was president of Bankers Life and Trust, I think, in Texas. They got financing through him to do the film. And there's a backstory to that John D. MacArthur got some static from his people about financing a documentary on UFOs. But anyway, it was all set up. And their contact at the White House, whose name escapes me right now, called and said, Bob, we've got to retract our offer on using the film. And Bob was stunned. He said, we're ready to go. Why? What's the problem? He said, Watergate has popped up, and it's causing big problems with the president. And the president, instead of thinking this would bolster his reelection, it could possibly hurt his reelection. So go ahead and make the documentary without the film. And Bob said, without the film, that's really the heart of the documentary. And he said his contact said, well, you can go ahead and say in the future segment, this is what may happen in the future, or perhaps already has happened. They were allowed to go onto the very secure Holloman Air Force Base and film at Holloman. And they used some animation of a saucer landing at Holloman, but there was a lot of footage taken in the documentary at Holloman. And if you watch the documentary, you'll see them panning around the base and the runways with the mountains in the background, and you'll see an object. There's a jump in the film clip. There's a jump in the film, and when it jumps, you see a light coming down from high and sort of flaring out over the runway. A lot of people have said that they got a few feet of actual footage of a UFO that they used in the documentary. And I asked Bob about that, and he said, I've been misquoted. No. And I told him, I said, Bob, it looks to me like that's a landing light on the nose wheel of an aircraft. And he said, that's exactly what it was. He told me that in his breakfast room in his home.
They did accurately describe to him what was in the footage, right, to allow for an accurate recreation,
right?
In the end. So
Bob was very disappointed in the animation of the extraterrestrials. They look like Egyptians. And he said he thought that was rather silly, and he didn't like that animation part of it. But that's what's in the film, and Bob was a little concerned about that. But other than that, you've got Jimmy, you've got Colonel Coleman, who was recently retired when the documentary was made, walking the halls of the Pentagon.
Yeah, they filmed in the Pentagon, yes.
They filmed in the Pentagon, walking the halls of the Pentagon, and then standing under a portrait of Hort Vandenberg discussing the famous estimate of the situation that you well know, where the original Project Sign group came up with this estimate of the situation, stating that after all of their research, they felt that the only explanation for these UFO sightings, this was, 1950, that they had to be extraterrestrial. And when that was kind of like a hot potato and went up the chain of command and landed on Hort Vandenberg's desk, and he became inflamed and said, we can't go public with this. Take this back and redo it, and take this extraterrestrial hypothesis out of it, and redo it. And the long and short of it, it was the death of Project Sign. They probably all the people who worked on Project Sign were sent off to Alaska or somewhere. But the idea, the Project Sign and what they came up with in the estimate of the situation with Colonel Coleman standing under Hort Vandenberg's
portrait, yes,
portrait, taken inside of the Pentagon, and talking about the estimate of the situation and what it said is rather amazing. You just don't walk into the Pentagon with a film crew and start filming a documentary about UFOs, unless you've got some really pretty high-level government support.
Yeah, or shooting on an Air Force base, or
shooting at Holloman Air Force Base, which is highly secure.
Right.
Or Bob Friend, who later ran Project Blue Book for a while, talking to an an Army helicopter crew. The Coyan incident over Mansfield, Ohio, that had a harrowing experience with a UFO over Mansfield, and describing that event. These things just don't happen without you can't get active personnel to talk about. The government just doesn't let active personnel talk about events like this. So the documentary is an amazing documentary.
Yeah, once you know the backstory, and also it just makes it so much more interesting to watch, because the other thing that is implied throughout the documentary is that this is official, and it is implied. Just like, when Rod Serling says at the end that this may happen in the future, or it may have already happened in the past, right? He does that, and it is such a tense situation. But the official backing from Washington, D.C. is implied throughout the documentary, because it was there. And that's the way that Emmenegger approached it from the very, very beginning, because he had that confidence that he had the backing of Haldeman and the White House and Nixon to make this to begin with. So he had free reign to make this documentary. That's why it is one of the most important UFO documentaries ever. And when you watch it and you know that backstory, especially about that 600 feet of footage that was supposed to be there and then they had to replace it, it just makes it so intriguing to watch to this day. Everybody, that's required 101 ufology right there, is to watch that documentary.
I couldn't agree with you more. It really is. And when you think that you know Stan Friedman well, I'm sure.
Yes.
Stan told me, he said, when I knew they were making the documentary, I met with Bob Emenegger and Alan Sandler for lunch in Los Angeles. And Stan is a great guy. And he told them, he said, you really ought to have me in this documentary. I ought to be part of the documentary. And he said, Stan told me, he laughed, and he said, well, they told me, we appreciate it, Stan. We know you know a lot about it, but we want to use all military personnel in this thing. And Stan laughed about it. Stan, the great thing about Stan is he doesn't have a great ego. He doesn't mind, telling stories on himself. And but as a sidelight to this, Stan at that meeting had a manuscript or some documents that he had obtained that were in Russian. And he mentioned that to them, and he said, I've got these, and I don't know how to get them translated. And either Sandler or Emenegger, I think it was Sandler, said, give me the documents, and I'll have them translated for you. So Stan said that, okay, what do I got to lose? He gave Sandler the documents and thought, well, maybe I'll hear back something in 2 or 3 months. He said within 2 days, he had his documents back and the translation of his documents within 2 days. And he said at that point, I knew that Emenegger and Sandler had some very high connections within the government that could do this at this time in the 1970s, that the government had equipment that could translate Russian to English that quickly and print it out and get it back to me. So he said, I knew that they truthfully had high connections within the government.
Do you think after the Nixon administration and after Watergate, do you think that was the turning point with presidential knowledge of UFOs?
I think that the turning point really occurred in the Eisenhower administration. I think that the Truman was deeply involved in it. It's my belief, and I know that I'll catch a lot of heck from other ufologists, but I think the Majestic 12, some of the Majestic 12 documents are authentic. I have, as much as I respect Bob Wood and Ryan Wood, I have a great deal of concern about the Tim Cooper documents. But I think several of the Majestic 12 documents are factual, and I think Majestic 12 did exist. Probably doesn't now in another name. But I think that it was passed on to the Eisenhower administration. We had recovered some craft, which I believe were probes. I don't believe they were craft that flew across the vastness of space. I think they were probes that came from, I hate to use the term motherships, but for lack of a better word, I think they were probes that were expendable, and I think we recovered those probes. And why they crashed, who knows? We talked about radar interference. We were experimenting with some very high-powered radar in the Four Corners area at that time.
So it stopped with Kennedy?
I think that the Eisenhower administration, and I think that the famous speech that Eisenhower made when he left office to, beware of the power of the military-industrial complex, I think that he could see that the information on UFOs or flying saucers or extraterrestrials was being wrenched away from the executive office, as Truman had anticipated or wanted, and was taken over by the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex.
Isn't it funny how Eisenhower's speech 60 years ago is absolutely 100% accurate and truthful today. Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing. Now, I think some of this was passed on to Kennedy, and of course, the Kennedy story is another story we can't get into right now.
Well, it certainly is.
But I think that it was the beginning of the knowledge being taken away from the the executive office. I think Nixon was the exception. Nixon was vice president under Eisenhower, and I think he had a great deal of knowledge. I think he was in on a great deal of knowledge, and he was deeply interested in it. But I think after Nixon and after LBJ, who was probably the first president to sort of be taken out of the loop, I think that the knowledge of all of this UFO information, the UFO issue, was slowly taken away from the executive branch and only dribbled out to them on a need-to-know basis. And the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex saw it as a need-to-know issue, and they did not think that presidents in general had a need to know.
Is it because, Larry, presidents come and go? You know,
yes.
Is that it? What is running before them is going to run after them, and I'm talking about the CIA, the military, the Pentagon. These are guys that are there for 30 and 40 years at a stretch, and there isn't a reason to pull in the president, or they don't think the president is special enough to need to know this. I hate to say need to know, but he's not going to change what has happened before him, and he's not going to change anything after he leaves office. So there isn't a reason to bring him into the mix, right?
That's exactly right. Bill Clinton made a statement, made several statements about UFOs, and one of them was that he had looked into the Roswell incident and sent people to look into it. But he said, he closed the statement by saying, I wouldn't be the first president that high-level bureaucrats lied to.
Right.
I think that speaks volumes in itself.
Yes, it does.
So, I think that the presidents today, they're on a need-to-know basis, and the.
Well, let me do this, because I actually want to specifically talk about the presidents, and we're going to start with Obama, and we're going to work backwards with as much time as we have left to try to get as much of that in. But before we do that, this one question has now popped up in Twitter about 10 times, and so everybody's retweeting it. So before we get back to the presidents, I just want to address this. It's about ask Larry what he knows about a UFO landing in broad daylight at Dover Air Force Base in April of 2012. What do you know about that?
I've heard about it, but I don't have a great deal of knowledge on it. No, I wish I did, but no, I have heard about it. I have not studied it. I haven't looked into it. So I really can't give you. I wish I could, but I can't give you any solid information on it.
Fair enough, Larry. Fair enough. And this comes in from Walter, and he says, did Kennedy request UFO files 10 days before he was assassinated in a secret memo?
I don't know the exact date, whether it was 10 days or 2 weeks or a month before, but yes, he certainly did. He requested UFO files not only from the CIA, from Alan Dulles, whom he fired, but also from NASA. He requested, and that's documented. we have documentation on that he requested. He wanted to share our space secrets and UFO information with the Soviets, primarily because he was afraid some events had transpired that put both countries on alert that involved some high-flying, very high-speed objects that could have been interpreted as intercontinental ballistic missiles, and which turned out to be both countries found out they weren't, and they disappeared over the northern hemisphere somewhere. But it scared both countries.
Do you think that had anything to do with the passing of the suicide of Marilyn Monroe, or the murder of Marilyn Monroe?
People have asked me that a lot.
I know.
I don't think so. Simply because all you have to do is, if she came out and made some statements that President Kennedy told her this or told her that, all they'd have to do is say, that's baloney. All the government would have to do is say, that's baloney. She just, she's a drugged up lady, and that's just, pure baloney. So I think she may have had other things that may have caused her death or her assassination that she was going to reveal, but I don't think it had anything to do with the Kennedy assassination.
What do
That's
you think?
My take on it.
You've seen the FBI memo about tapping her phones about the UFO subject. I'm sure you've reviewed that document. Do you think that's authentic?
Possibly.
Yeah,
Possibly.
because it directly references in the document Kennedy, UFO, and tapping phones, right? It's like all in one sentence.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, she could say anything. People, there've been a lot of people. Paul Hellyer has come out and was Minister of Defense in Canada, but you got the debunkers that come out and say, well, he's just an old guy shooting off his mouth. So I think that anything that Marilyn Monroe said concerning her relationship with Kennedy and UFOs could be debunked pretty easily. So I don't think that was a major concern. I doubt that she would have been eliminated because of that. She very well could have been eliminated because of other things.
Yeah. Well, I see if all of that is factual, the FBI document and her knowledge, then we actually have to picture this in our own mind. Jack and her are lying in bed smoking cigarettes, right? And and Jack says, I just got to take this UFO flying saucer thing public. What do you think? That's got to be the conversation that went down between the two of them. So you have to wonder if that would have actually happened, because where else is she going to get the knowledge from? So
it could have.
Yeah,
it could have.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just talking, this is real life. Where else would it have happened besides, the bedroom? Because I don't think, they were like hanging out for weeks at a time on a summer vacation in the south of France. It was, these were momentary trysts that were going down.
Yeah. And I think it could have. I think it could have happened, but again, it's so easily debunked. That's the point I'm making.
But men do get stupid at that moment.
and that's why I think the presidents are not told much about the issue, because they do get stupid, and they do talk a lot, and they're only in office for a short time. Politicians, I've always said, Jimmy, that people that tell me that the government cannot keep secrets, and I say baloney. the government is very well equipped in keeping secrets.
That's all they
may
do.
not be able to keep political secrets.
Right.
That's different.
Right.
That's a different story altogether. But they can keep secrets that involve national defense and our military and what our military is doing and what our military is developing. They can keep those secrets very well. Just think about the fact that you try to cross over the imaginary line at Area 51 or at Dugway Proving Ground.
It ain't gonna happen.
I often say with people say, "What? We can't protect our borders." Well, I wonder why we can protect Dugway in Area 51, but we can't protect that border between the United States and Mexico.
Yeah. You know, I have a friend, I can't say his name, and then we're going to move on to Obama, so get ready. Yeah. I have a friend, I'm over at his house a couple of years ago, Rita and I, cookout, and he goes, "Jimmy, man, I got to show you something." And he goes in the house, and he comes out with a ground sensor from Area 51 that he dug up. And it's a black box with all that military writing. You look at it, and you're like, "Man, I don't even want to touch that. You can go to jail." And he said, "Yeah, exactly." And but you're absolutely right. You can't do anything. What he had, that is to protect. That is on American. Well, our border would be in American soil, but we're talking about in inside of a state, right there. To protect, and you can't even, you can't get anywhere. They know if a jackrabbit is running around, let alone a human being, right?
Oh, if you're coming down the extraterrestrial highway, they're probably watching.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a public road.
Yeah. No, they know everybody pulling out of Vegas heading north. Seriously. Okay, let's jump forward to today. We have, let's talk about Obama. Of course, his appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, that's one thing. You have John Podesta and his statements that he has recently made as well, who was part of Obama's staff for a long time. And his urgency in his statement that, you know what, I made a mistake. I should have pushed for disclosure. It's one of the things that I regret. So let's talk about Obama and his knowledge. Do you think do you have evidence that him and Podesta talked about UFOs or disclosure?
Probably. When I wrote the book, I really didn't think Obama had any great knowledge or interest in the UFO question. I thought that his interest was elsewhere. But after his appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel Show and listening to his response and his nervous laughter and the statement that he made, I can't remember exactly what it was, but something along the lines of, "They don't let us talk about that." I'm starting to believe that, he and probably all presidents are somewhat briefed on the subject. Probably not to any great degree, but they are briefed and told in a very nice way, "Mr. President, keep your mouth shut. Just don't even talk about it." And this goes back to, you think about Jerry Ford, who was deeply involved, wrote letters to Mendel Rivers when he was congressman from Michigan about all the sightings in Michigan in 1966 and wanted to have congressional hearings and all of this. Once he got into office, you never heard a peep out of him. Jimmy Carter, who was going to release all of the UFO files because he'd had a UFO sighting, even filed a UFO sighting report. And when he got into office, he was going to release all the files. You never heard a peep about it. Ronald Reagan, it's reported that his advisors or handlers, I shouldn't say handlers, that doesn't sound well, but in essence, the people that advised him said it is reported that they had a hard time keeping the lid on President Reagan from talking about UFOs, but he did talk about them, and he'd had 2 UFO sightings, but really he didn't talk about them. Bill Clinton, it is reported in whose book was that? Webster Hubbell's book, I think it was, that said that Clinton said, "I want you to investigate 2 things: who actually killed JFK, and what's the real story on UFOs." He had an interest in it, but publicly he made a few statements on UFOs, but he denied any knowledge of them. So it's interesting that when people on that, before they run for president, can make a lot of noise, but once they get into office, they become clams, and you hear nothing about them. So,
well, not only during office, but after they leave office. Carter never brought it up again. Reagan never brought it up again. Clinton laughed about it on the Jimmy Kimmel show. But as far as any direct reference or wanting to take a question from a reporter or a former constituent about it, it never gets addressed again. But going into office and before office, they're singing in the streets. And
that's exactly right. That's the point I'm making. Do you remember the speech that Clinton made in, I think it was Northern Ireland, Belfast perhaps, and in the speech he addressed a youngster, Jimmy or someone, that had written him a letter and asked him, he said, "I received this letter from Jimmy or whomever, and if you're out there, you asked me if a spaceship crashed in Roswell. Well, Jimmy, I had my people investigate that and know, to the best of my knowledge, that didn't happen." And then he went on to say, of course, no, I'm mixing up 2 events. He went on to say, the Air Force, I checked into that, and the Air Force said that no, I'm trying to remember exactly how this went, but the Air Force said that no, there was no crash of an extraterrestrial vehicle at Roswell in 1947. Well, presidential speeches are carefully crafted, and everything the presidents say in their speeches are looked over and studied and crafted and reworked and are carefully written. And this may be a minute point, but I still think it's an important point. He said the Air Force said that there was no crash in Roswell. In 1947, in July of 1947, there was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps or the Army Air Force. It wasn't the United States Air Force. Now, that's a fine point, Jimmy, and people will say, now you're really splitting hairs. But I will tell you, presidential speeches are carefully crafted.
It would be their way out, because obviously they knew that there was no Air Force back then. So that he wouldn't be lying.
He wouldn't be lying. It's their way out. You say he would not be. If it turned out that it was, Clinton could very well say, I wasn't lying, because there was not an Air Force then.
Well, and I want to go back to Reagan for a second, because he he and Nancy had, one of their famous sightings. They're driving up PCH, and they're driving to a party in Beverly Hills, Lucille Ball. And I forget, it was Lucille. It was at Lucille Ball's house, but it was a party for another actor. I'll think about it in a second, but that doesn't matter. But that's where they're driving, and
Steve Allen was there.
Steve Allen was there, and they see this ship out over the Pacific Ocean. I don't know if it came out of the water or whatever, but they see it, and when they get to the party, that's all that they talked about. They talked to one person after another about this sighting, and he was a politician at that time, and it was something that he was proud. He saw it. Him and Nancy, they witnessed it together, and they were just flapping away. He never mentioned it again.
No,
he never. I find that so interesting, but when we move forward to his famous UN speech and how many times he dropped that bomb about, we had a confrontation from something else from out there, that those sentences, just like you say, those are well crafted. He went out of his way. They didn't want him to say that in his speech, but he still dropped it in there anyway. There are some say that it was written into the speech and then it was redacted and it was removed from the speech, but he said the line anyway because he felt that it was important. Then there's others that say no, that it was actually written out in the speech and he read what was there, and which doesn't matter. What he said in front of the United Nations is what he said. And he wouldn't have said that unless he had his own personal experiences with Nancy from before. And that's what I think is important here. But then he never went there again. And after he left office, he just let it go. I can't imagine who has that kind of power over a sitting president, and which is the question, who can actually hold that kind of weight over a president to tell them never, ever, ever mention this subject again for the rest of your life? Who has that kind of juice?
I don't know, and it's a question that I've mulled over for a long time. That excuse me, there has to be people deep within the government, excuse me, deep within the intelligence community that wield a great deal of power, that knows something.
Do you think it would be, and I don't know if this is opinion or you might have something factual to back this up, but do you think it is something as simple as they slide a file in front of him, it's got a page or two in it, and it says, the flying saucers are real, E.T. is real. And it's just as simple as that. They don't go into any details, and that's enough to scare somebody into a train of thought. What, holy crap, okay, oh, it is real. Okay, I can't talk about it. You're going into office and having the question about it and talking about it is one thing, but then when you find out the truth, then you're scared straight. Could it be that?
Well, I think the president's just like everybody else in the government and in civilian life that work under high security clearances. Those clearances are go on for the rest of their life. You can't talk about these things.
So Ford, Carter, anybody else, Clinton, Obama, going into office haven't had that security clearance laid onto them yet, at least at that level. But once you become POTUS, now you're at a security clearance and an oath.
These people are patriots. I have a friend. I'm here in Eastern Virginia, live on a golf course that has a lot of retirees that move here from D.C., that work for the government in D.C. Some of them work for the CIA and the NSA, even the NRO that did photo interpretation. One of them retired early and lived for several years cruising the Bahamas on a 58-foot yacht. So he made a lot. He worked for TRW Systems, and I said, you worked under high security, but you don't talk about what you did. And I said, you can't tell me anything you did. Did it involve UFOs? He said, no, it didn't. What it did was, what I did involved nuclear warfare, but that's all I can say. And I said, you feel that you can't talk about it? And he said, no, I'm under a security clearance and it doesn't allow me to talk about it. And I said, you feel that strongly about it? And he said, yeah, for two reasons. Number one, I'm a patriot. And number two, I don't want to go to prison. So,
yeah. Yeah, that would make up my mind too. Your family comes into play. That's it's not necessarily about you. It could be if you weren't married and you never had kids, but your family comes into play, and that is what you're putting. Well, of course, country too as well. But it's your family and everything else, and certainly legacy too. You don't want to be that the grandfather that did those things, and so all of that does come into play. When
I was doing research in the Johnson Library in Austin, I was in walking distance of the office of Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, and I think Bobby Ray Inman, Admiral Inman, and I'm sure you're familiar with.
Oh,
Admiral.
yeah.
I think he probably knew more about the subject than perhaps anyone at the time that he was in office. And I requested through his secretary to have a meeting with Admiral Inman. And I knew that Admiral Inman had been recorded, had a telephone conversation with a ufologist that I consider very questionable because of.
Yes, yeah, we both. Yeah, let's not go there. But the conversation.
Right. But anyway.
Yes.
And I knew he had been burned, and I made it clear. I said I would just like to talk to Admiral Inman to ask him general questions on his feelings about the UFO subject. Nothing classified. I'm not asking him to give me any classified information. I just like to talk with him about UFOs in general, on the record, off the record, whatever. Anything that I print that he talks to me about, I will pass on to him for his review before I release it. And, I tried to be as honest as I could, but he turned me down. Well, I think he'd been burned by a ufologist that didn't play by the rules, in my opinion. And so I understand that. But I was in walking distance of his office, and I would have loved to have talked to him because I respect him highly. But no, he didn't want to talk to him.
No, he got thrown under the bus. Bobby Ray Inman was close to disclosing. I think he wanted to, but his trust was betrayed, and that was the end of that. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to have Larry share the Doug Locke, General LeMay judo story in Biggs Air Force Base. You ready for that, Larry?
I'm ready.
Okay, we'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst, Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn
it. This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black tonight. Very special guest Larry Hulcom is with us. His new book, Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. Don't forget, tomorrow night, there is no Fader night tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we will have David Hatcher Childress right here. All right. So, Larry, let's back this train up. Okay, let's back it up. The story is an amazing one, and I'm lucky to have heard it. You haven't shared it before on radio. It's in your book, but you haven't talked about this publicly. So, and it's I titled it myself, if you don't mind, the General LeMay judo story. let's call it that, and take it away.
Well, when I was in the 1980s, when the Roswell story broke, obviously I was very interested in it. But what was of particular interest to me was why no one had ever heard of Roswell before. Why why Roswell was such an unknown issue until the 1980s. Obviously, Roswell happened with the newspaper, the Roswell paper, and newspapers across the West carried it. But then they came out with the weather balloon story, and it faded away almost immediately. But Roswell, to me, in years after reading Donald Kehoe's books, remained very important in my mind, and as a point of importance in the UFO or flying saucer story, as did Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I couldn't remember why Roswell was so important to me when no one seemed to know anything about it until the story broke in the 80s. After it broke in the 80s, and I was scratching my head and saying, I've known about Roswell being an important part of the UFO story for years, going back to 1960. Why? And it was like a fog. I didn't know why. When I started writing my novel, the fog started to lift, and I started to remember some background from 1960. And that background was that I was 17 years old, living in the little town of Sandston, Virginia, just outside of Richmond. And I had a friend, an older friend, had made friends with a fellow in his 30s that had opened up a new service station in Sandston, the Sunoco service station, and his name was Doug Locke. And Doug told we became friends, and just a little background on Doug. He grew up on a tobacco farm in Southside, Virginia, way back up in the woods. In fact, I went back to his home place and spent a couple of nights there with him and his family. But Doug was tough as a mule. As I have said, if you think of Andy Griffith that played Will Stockdale in the old No Time for Sergeants movie, Doug was like Will Stockdale. He was an old country boy, but as strong as a mule, about 6'2", and weighed about 220, and had worked on the tobacco farms and was just really strong as you can imagine. As I've said, he could probably knock out a charging bull with one blow. Anyway, he went in, after high school, he went into the Air Force. And people made some fun of him for his accent and country ways. And a lot of them ended up with a broken jaw. And he went before his commanding officer quite a few times. Well, at that time, General LeMay, at the urging of Emilio Bruno, I think it was a wrestling champion at the time, told LeMay that he ought to think about training pilots in judo. And LeMay thought it was a good idea and turned the project over to his subordinate, General Thomas Power, I believe it was. And so Power put out a request to have 24 men. They didn't have anybody to teach judo. He put out a request for 24 men to be sent to Japan, to the Kodokan, I think it was, School of Judo, and be trained by a famous judo instructor in Japan on judo, martial arts, and come back and train pilots. Well, Doug's commanding officer saw this and said, well, I got just the man, and he nominated Doug, and Doug ended up being one of the 24 they went to Japan to be trained as judo instructors. And he came back and was stationed at Biggs Air Force Base in El Paso, which is no longer active, but at the time was. And so when I had read Kehoe's book, I knew that Doug had told me he'd been a judo instructor, and I'd read Kehoe's books, and I'd become very fascinated with UFOs, flying saucers. But I was reluctant to bring it up to Doug because I thought he would, country boy and all of this, would look at me and say, kid, you don't believe in that stuff, do you? So I got up my nerve, and I told him about what I'd read. And he looked me square in the eyes, and he said, Larry, it's all true. And I said, what do you mean? He said, when I taught judo to pilots at Biggs Air Force Base, and we had pilots that came in from surrounding bases, and if you know that Roswell Air Force Base, the 509th Bomb Group, was really within spitting distance, if you will, of El Paso. Their pilots came over there to be trained in judo also. And he said, the pilots that I instructed, many of the pilots that I instructed told me about encounters that they had had with UFOs while flying missions over the Four Corners area. And he said, these were brave guys. They fought in the Second World War. He said, but they were badly shaken by what they had seen and the craft that they had encountered. And I remember also him telling me about one pilot that was a bomber pilot that said that he had flown debris, crashed saucer debris from Roswell, and a lot of years have passed, folks, so please understand that my memory's not all that clear, but I remember him saying that Roswell was the center of the activity. That's where all of the stuff was taken, and that's where it all went out of.
What year was this, Larry?
As best I can tell, somewhere around 1950 or 1951.
Now, in 1951, let's talk about this for a second. In 1950, 1951, up until 1980, Roswell had disappeared.
Right.
Nobody talked about it. You had never heard about it. The rest of the United States, it was something that was squashed and had completely disappeared, except for your friend who made this reference to you about it in 1950, 1951, 1952. That is a long time ago.
Well, his reference to me was in 1960.
Okay, there you go. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
In 1960, nobody knew about Roswell. It had faded away. The government's cover-up of it was 100% effective.
Right.
And now, but I want to come back to 1960 in just a second. You heard about this in 1980, Roswell. You hear about it again. And then you turn to your wife and you say what?
I turned to my wife and I said, do you remember me when you and I were dating? Do you remember that I told you a story about Doug Lark telling me about pilots telling him about UFOs and their experience with UFOs, and this one bomber pilot that actually flew debris from Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, along with bodies. And I think the reference to bodies, I sort of put up, in 1960, I sort of put up a sheet. That was a little much for me to take as a 17-year-old. I believed in flying saucers, but alien bodies was a little much. So it sort of went into the back recesses of my mind, and that's why I couldn't recall it when the Roswell story came out in the 80s. I even went back and reread Kehoe's books to see if there was any reference to Roswell. But the bottom line is the story that he told me in 1960 fit just neatly like a piece of a puzzle into the Roswell story. And he told me, and time makes your memory fade, but it was clear to me that Roswell was the center and was very important to me in my knowledge and thinking about the UFO subject. Roswell was important to me as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was, but I couldn't remember why. And until I wrote this book, and my memory started to come back, and then I asked my wife, I said, do you remember, Doug, me telling you when you and I were dating that Doug Locke told me the story about what pilots told him when he was instructing them in judo at Biggs Air Force Base and UFOs? And she said, oh, yeah, I remembered. So I knew about Roswell from 1960. I didn't remember why, but I knew that Roswell was important to the story in 1960. And here was a guy in 1960 telling me a story that all of a sudden fits like a key piece of the puzzle into what we know today.
One of the things that I want to drive home to the audience with you, Larry, is I study radio and I study mass media. I respect what came before me. And the only way to do that is to go back and take the time and listen to archived radio from back in the day. And I listen to it constantly. It drives my wife nuts, but I do it every single night. And I'm not making light of this. And so when you go back to listen to Long John Nebel and other broadcasters around the country that did late night radio talk shows, you go back and you listen to all of the leading guys like Kehoe, you can Arthur C. Clarke, and you can just go back and listen to these fascinating interviews and discussions about ufology. But the one thing that you do not ever hear reference, not once, there is not one reference anywhere, and I've listened to thousands of hours of radio, is Roswell. You get plenty.
Right. You're exactly right.
You get plenty of references to Kenneth Arnold. You get plenty of references to Washington, D.C. You anything else, Kentucky and Tennessee and these other incidents that happened around the country at the time, from 1950, 1947, 1950, all the way through the modern era up until but you don't hear a reference to Roswell. And if you think that I'm nuts, go back and listen, because they will take case after case after case after case and talk about them all the time. Authors, researchers, television personalities, actors. They all get interviewed. They talk about their sightings and these cases, and they bring on witnesses to these cases. But the one thing that is not referenced is Roswell. So for Doug to say this to you in 1960, he had to have direct knowledge and reference to it. And I think this is an important statement here. It just must have blown your mind. I just can't imagine what you went through when you had that revelation. And
when the fog lifted, it was really something. And I went back and did some research and checked out General Curtis LeMay and judo, and people can do that on the internet now, and can find out that the story is correct. That he did initiate a judo school back around 1950 and had General Power run it for him and have these people selected to send to the Codian school. So it verified, at least to me, that what Doug was telling me was absolutely true. It all, what I have not done is gone to Air Force records to find Doug's records in the Air Force archives. That takes a little bit of money and a little bit of travel, and that takes some doing, and I haven't done it, and I need to do it. But I have researched the fact that LeMay did initiate this program, and General Thomas Powell ran it, and 24 people were selected to go to Japan to be trained as judo instructors. And Biggs Air Force Base was where Doug was stationed, and so it's.
Were you able to go back?
All fit.
Were you able to go back in 1980 and contact Doug? I mean, I realize today he's not with us, but
no, he passed away in his 40s. He had lung cancer. He never smoked, but he worked as an electrician in New York City, and he developed, in his 40s, he developed lung cancer from asbestos poisoning. I did research some records and find out that he filed a suit before he passed away. He and his wife filed a suit against Johns Manville Corporation. I checked that out, and that's in the record that they filed a suit, but it was thrown out of court because so much time had passed. So nothing came of that. But there was a suit filed by Doug Locke against John Manville. So, everything. The only thing I don't have is the exact timeline when he was in the Air Force at Biggs Air Force Base. But I remember talking to his father when I was, 20 or 21 years old. And his father was a Baptist minister. And his father said, I've been encouraging Doug to get involved in his church, Baptist church here, and start teaching youngsters judo, because he's a judo instructor, and start teaching youngsters in the church martial arts. So it's all of the pieces fit together. The only thing I don't have is the exact timeline when he was in the Air Force, the period of time he was in the Air Force.
Yeah, when I talk to friends of mine outside of ufology about this subject, and inevitably I hear this, well, how could it be possible that the government could actually cover up something like this? And I just go, they covered up Roswell forever. That was as successful of a squash that has ever been done. They killed the story. They went in, they silenced everybody, and until everybody started singing in 1980, it was forgotten. In 1990, when after some of the books came out and stuff, but I would go back and listen to some of the old radio, which is actually recent. It's 25 years ago, but the show host back then didn't know anything about Roswell. They were asking questions of researchers. They clearly didn't have a foundation of what was going on because there wasn't anything out there. There was a couple of books, but unless you read those books, there was nothing on TV. It just wasn't. It was successfully squashed completely. And if they could pull that off, there's no telling. And you brought up one other point that I want to drive home. When you are a patriot, and you sign, and and your job is secrecy, and your job is you are told, for the security and for the benefit of the United States, well, then that's what you do. It is your job to keep your mouth shut, for the safety and for the integrity of the United States, and that's it. And you don't say anything ever. Well, it's your job. That is what you do. It's your job. You don't talk about it. And if you do step out of line at all, then you're outside of the circle. They kick you out of the club, and that's it. And that's important to you as well. Is your future, your job, your pension, and also the respect of the people that you work with. And
and they discredit you.
They discredit you, and you don't want to do that. Once you get thrown out of the car, you can't get back in and shut the door. You're out of the car forever, and getting other employment is going to be nearly impossible, and you know that. So all of that comes into play.
It's like Jesse Marcel when Stan Friedman found Jesse Marcel. Jesse Marcel had kept his mouth shut for years and years and years, and was eaten up by the fact that he was told a lie and made to look like a fool. But when Stanton Friedman found him, and in his elderly years, he had had enough, and he wanted to talk, and he did talk to Stan Friedman. He didn't go to Stan. Stan found him. And Marcel was ready to talk. He'd had enough. He'd lived with a lie for a long time, and he did talk. And even though he was a patriot, he didn't like being made a fool of, and he didn't like having to lie for the Air Force that he felt, or the Army that he was very close to. So when they get old, some do talk. And
hey, Larry, we're at the end of things, but I don't want this conversation to end. Can you give me another 15 minutes of overtime?
Sure.
Can you hang?
Sure.
Can you hang? Because I'm having a great time. Let's take a break, and I want to take some phone calls. I have a couple of more questions I want to get to, but would you like to take some phone calls?
Sure, be glad to.
Okay, great. So we're going to take this break. I'm going to open up the phone lines during the break. 323-825-5045. Tonight's guest, Larry Hulcom, and his new book, Presidents and UFOs, The Secret History from FDR to Obama. 323-825-5045. Phone calls are already coming in. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
And you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Attention, all Fader Knots. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONsymposium.com. That's MUFONsymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. Email is Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. Tonight, very special guest Larry Hulcom is with us. His new book, Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR through Obama. And it is in full release right now, Amazon.com. And all of the links are at JimmyChurchRadio.com. You can just go click on Larry's name and head straight there. Let's go to the phones. Hi, Dino.
Hey, good evening, Jimmy. Hey, Larry Hulcom. We have a live chat that goes on with the program, and we're really enjoying you. We like your style and your knowledge, and I'm going to have to read your book. But you've been in this field a bit longer than me, and I think you're a bit older than me chronologically. I wanted to ask you, if you think, some of us in this movement think that it's not worth going through a full disclosure. We've got Stephen in Washington, D.C., trying to do the full disclosure, trying to get the congressional hearings. Do you think this is a waste of time? I've put a little time and a little money into it myself, but some people think that the government will never disclose anything. And what do you think about this?
I don't think the government is going to disclose anything willfully because they have nothing to gain and a great deal to lose. I think that over the years there have been too many lies told, too many acts of illegal acts committed, perhaps even assassinations or murders. I hate to sound like a conspiracist on that, but I think that that really, especially as far as presidents go, I don't think that it's in the cards for any administration to admit anything, because again they have nothing to gain and a great deal to lose. So I think unless it's forced on the government by our visitors, if you will, I don't think that they will disclose anything. I think that we came very close to disclosure with the Nixon administration, but I think since then I don't see the government making disclosure happen at any time in the future. I think Stephen Bassett is a great guy, and has pushed for disclosure at length, but and he thinks it will happen, but I respectfully disagree with Steve that I just don't think it will happen.
And thanks.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah, real quick.
What about the theory that Hillary Clinton, now that her emails have been forced to be revealed, that there was a thought that in those emails there may be some reference to things like the Rockefeller Initiative and the fact that she had visited Mr. Rockefeller, and that this would make the mainstream media, if they're sharp reporters, start to look into this more, which would start to trigger disclosure.
Thank you for
she'd have to answer honestly.
Thank you for the call, Dino.
Okay, good night, Jim.
Great question.
There's no question that she and Bill were involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. I have some. I question whether they were. Bill Clinton was sort of. Oh boy, what's the right word to say? Was patronizing Mr. Rockefeller. He was very wealthy, and he wanted to capitalize on Rockefeller's wealth.
That could be, but certainly Rockefeller was patronizing him. I mean, it was definitely coming from the other side, and they were definitely photographed together, and Hillary had the book with her, too, as well.
Yeah, there's no question they were very interested in it, but I'm just the whole Rockefeller Initiative, as it involves the Clintons, is a bit of a enigma to me, and but there's no question that the Clintons were very interested in this, but their association with Rockefeller, I don't know. It's like I say, it's an enigma with me.
I got a couple of questions here that came in from one of our producers. What can we, and this question is directed at you directly now, Larry, because like it or not, you're a journalist now, you're an author now, and you're part of mass media because you work for St. Martin's. So you're a card-carrying mass media guy now.
I feel a monkey being put on my back.
Yeah, here it comes. What can we as individuals do to overcome media indifference to the UFO issue?
Oh, what a question. I've tried to do that myself. I can't get my hometown newspaper to recognize my book, except with a very little blurb in the book section of the Sunday paper. I thought when the book came out from St. Martin's, they may do a feature story on it.
Yeah, be proud.
They don't want any parts of it.
Yeah,
they really proud. The media simply doesn't want any part of UFO stories.
You mean the local television station there? You haven't been on. What city do you live in?
I'm outside of Richmond. Richmond, Virginia is my.
You haven't been invited on Good Morning Richmond?
Nothing.
That's interesting. And don't you find that interesting, young man? Don't you?
I find it maddening. I mean, it's. I wrote a long letter to the publisher, and they sent me a very nice reply. But nothing has come of it, and it's the media. It's like they hold the whole UFO issue at a length of a 10-foot pole. They don't want anything to do with it.
Well, certainly St. Martin's is aware of the attention the book has gotten. You know, you've gotten picked up by Sony Pictures. Italy is now doing an international edition. Japan is next. And then you can, those dominoes are going to start falling. Other countries are going to pick it up too as well. Wouldn't they be interested in getting you on CNN or some news in New York or Los Angeles or Miami
I did a Fox radio interview on Fox News Radio with Alan Combs right after the book came out. But none of the television networks have given any interest in being on, and not the local media, which I must say I'm a bit surprised. But it's a subject that, for whatever reason, they keep at arm's length, and it's a mystery to me.
How has the reception been, and how are the sales going?
From what I can tell, the sales are doing very, very, very well. It is a hardcover book, and which makes it somewhat expensive. But I'm getting emails daily, several emails daily from people, not only in this country. I just got an email earlier today from a gentleman in Argentina that was asking a number of questions, and it's hard to reply in detail to everybody, but I try to.
What is the single most, and now you're out, you're speaking, and so forth. What is the single most unexpected and surprising contact story that you've been told by an attendee at one of your engagements?
Oh boy, I've had a number of them.
That's right.
A number of people that have written me about. I just this afternoon got 64 photographs from a gentleman that had taken pictures of a UFO that he had sent to MUFON, and he sent them on to me and asked for my opinion on them. Well, I'm no photo expert, but I will get back to him. They look quite interesting. And I receive a number of emails from people telling me about UFO events that they've witnessed. And most of them seem to be very reliable, very good. A few that are sort of off the scope, if you will, but most of them are very good. But yeah, I'm getting an awful lot of comments and stories from people around the country, around the world.
Are you speaking anywhere coming up?
I'm speaking to a MUFON group this month, as a matter of fact, on the 12th in Virginia, with the head of Virginia MUFON, whose name Sue, I can't remember, but and then next month I'm speaking to a very large MUFON group in Maryland. That I think that's on the 26th or 28th of October. So yeah, I've got speaking engagements coming up.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. I look forward to this for such a long time, and it was all that and more. I feel like we've left an awful lot on the table. I can't wait to get you back on, and we can go a little bit deeper, and we can go, left and right, and take this to the next level. Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy. We could probably talk for 24 hours.
I can't wait till you and I meet in person, and we can do a one-on-one for real. That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Larry. And I want everybody, all of Larry's information, just click on his name over at jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you right to his website. Everything is there. Everything is fresh and updated, and it's a great website. Larry Hulcom, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night, or a great rest of your night and going into the morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
So did I, Larry. Thank you so much. Larry Hulcom, everybody. And wow. And the book is a great read. And again, just click on Larry's name over at jimmychurchradio.com. It is right there and everything that you need to know. And man, that was an enlightening conversation. And one of the things that we talked about tonight, on a little recap before I get back to some other stuff that we have to talk about. One of the recaps is this. Larry and I were talking earlier today, and I wanted to drive this home. From Roswell, from the day after Roswell, let's go to, I'll jump up. Let's just say the end of July 1947 until the events and stuff that happened in 1980 and leading up to that, 1979 and 1980. Roswell did not exist. And one of the things that you can do, dear listener, is go and search out on Google. Search out, just to make things easy. Go to Long John Nebel. That's Nebel, Long John Nebel. And in Google, click on videos. You will get a list, there's hundreds, of Long John Nebel shows. And go and pick any one. It'll say The Party Line. That was the name of his show. And what Long John Nebel would do, and this is why you can use it as evidence, is he would have 3, 4, 5 guests in the studio overnight. And the show took place in New York City in Manhattan. And he would sit with all of these guests and sit and talk and have a conversation for 5 hours, 5 straight hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and talk about all things paranormal, ESP. Big subjects were ufology and flying saucers, if you will. And you can go and pick on different years, 1956, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. His show broadcast all the way through into the mid-70s. Go click on any of those shows. They will reference all of the Kehoe stuff, the Armstrong Theater. We didn't talk about that tonight with Larry. The Armstrong Theater incident, which is the show where Kehoe was cut off at the end because he went off script and what he ended up telling the public, what he was trying to tell the public was, you got to write your congressman. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about the UFO subject. You got to do this. And they cut him off. They cut off the audio. And so there's Kehoe on Long John Nebel talking about that. And the original interviews with Kenneth Arnold about everything that went down up in Seattle and Tacoma. All of that is there. But the one thing that is missing with all of that throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s is Roswell. Roswell did not exist. All of the books that were published, Blue Book, all of the researchers that were out there at the time, James McDonald, all of the Hynek, everybody that was into Jacques Vallée, everybody that was into the subject did not ever reference Roswell. It didn't exist. And with Larry, he had his friend in 1960 tell him all about it. That is an amazing point. And for that to be disclosed on the show tonight, for you to hear it like that from somebody that was there, that he didn't know anything about it, with all of his interest in UFOs and reading Kehoe in 1952 and 53 and 54. That was his interest. He had never heard about it. And his friend mentions it to him in 1960. Years go by, he forgot about it. Why? Because nobody else is talking about it. It just kind of went away. It went back into his brain and was stored until 1980 when he hears about Roswell And he's like, wait a minute, that's right. In 1960, Doug Locke said, and he turns to his wife, didn't I tell you about that? And the mention of bodies in 1960. That is interesting. And that's why you come to Fade to Black. Right there. And if there's ever a show recap, go back and listen to that section of the interview tonight. Absolutely amazing. I gotta get back to before I run out of time. Got a couple of things that I've been trying to get to over the last couple of nights, and sort of, certainly last night, and prepped for tonight. So let me get some of this interesting stuff out of the way. Chinese authorities have arrested nearly 200 people for alleged online rumor mongering about China's stock market turmoil and a recent deadly chemical factory explosion over in Tianjin. Among those arrested was Wang Jialu, a journalist for a financial publication called Caixin Magazine. And I'm quoting here, and this is from the official Chinese news service, who had been placed under criminal compulsory measures for suspected violations of colluding with others and fabricating and spreading fake information on securities and futures markets. Roughly 165 online accounts have been shut down over related violations over the past week. Censorship in full play. 200 people. Unbelievable. The Titanic's last lunch menu is going up for auction, and it's estimated to bring about $50,000 to $70,000. Online New York auctioneer Lionheart Autographs is offering it along with two other previously unknown artifacts from Lifeboat One this September 30th. You remember, Lifeboat One got its nickname because of the rumors that the first-class passengers bribed crew members to row away from the Titanic with only 12 people on board. But the capacity of Lifeboat One was 40. And this last lunch menu from the Titanic was on Lifeboat One. Does that make that worth $50,000 to $70,000? If I was rich, I would buy it and burn it. I'd light it on fire in public and do a YouTube video. That's what I would do. Israeli startup group called Do Matak, that's D-O-U-X, Do Matak, has invented a process of coating food-safe nanoparticles of cellulose or silica, what sand is made of, the beach, with real sugar. The company has found a way to replicate the same sweet, familiar taste that I know and love, with the added benefit of cutting sugar 25 to 55%. Sand. You're eating sand coated with sugar. And this stuff is coming to a marketplace near you. Oh, I had here we go. I forgot all about this. Nestle's Kit Kat. Kit Kat, right? The chocolate bar, the one that we love, announced that it will use only sustainably sourced cocoa to manufacture all of its chocolate by the first quarter of 2016. Now, the move, and this was unveiled this past Monday, means that the brand will become the world's first candy maker to produce its entire product line with cocoa accredited by third-party agencies to assure that it hasn't been harvested by child laborers. The chocolate industry has been facing increasing criticism over allegations of unfair labor practices, including the use of child labor. Little fingers getting to those cocoa beans. That's right. In addition, world supplies of cocoa have been dwindling. There you go. I'm backing Nestle Kit Kat from here on out. Now, the question is, what's up with Ghirardelli, because I like that salted sea salt, dark chocolate square. That's right, I said it. Chicago residents could have the chance to get tipsy, to get drunk, to get bombed at Target. Yes, Target confirmed this past Monday that it has applied for 2 liquor licenses for a store they're planning to open in October in Chicago's Streeterville neighborhood. Listen to what I'm saying here. You'll be able to go to this Target and get a cocktail and walk around the store and shop. Get a beer, get a brewski, and walk around the store and drink while you shop. Now, we already know Target sells alcohol that you can take home, but Target applied for both a packaged goods license and a consumption on-premises liquor license for its new store. And this is official right now in the public record. Streeterville, Chicago. President Obama announced this past Sunday that his administration is renaming Alaska's Mount McKinley to Denali. I talked about this, right, last week. And that's the tallest peak. It's 20,000 feet, Mount McKinley. But Alaska natives have been calling it Denali forever, and the name is sacred to many Alaskans. But Trump just announced that he's going to rename it back to McKinley if he gets in office. Well, that's it. You know, I'm not a political show. But really? All right. This is Fade to Black. I had so much fun tonight. Tomorrow night, yes, we had to bump Fader Night tomorrow night. And I did want to do it. But we've been trying to get David Hatcher Childress on this show for a long, long time. And all he does is travel. And finding the open date. And we had him for tonight. But then it had to get moved to tomorrow, and it was the only time that he had available. And we talked about this, and we discussed this at length. Should we do this? Should we let go of Fader Night? Because Thursday nights, I want everybody to understand, are sacred, man. Thursday night, I look forward to all week long. I just want to get through Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday just so I can get to Thursday night and hang out with you guys. And we just couldn't pull it off. So tomorrow night, I do. I want everybody to know. Hey, if you think, man, Jimmy just let go of Fader Night like it was nothing, bring it. It's just I've wanted David on for a long, long, long time, and he's looking forward to tomorrow night. So don't think that I didn't let go of Thursday without some trepidation. Okay, Thursday night is sacred around here, but tomorrow night there is no Fader Night. Tomorrow night is David Hatcher Childress right here on Fade to Black. And I just had to speak my piece about that. You know I love you all. Thursday night is so important. But tomorrow night, it's David Hatcher Childress. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Very special thanks to Larry Hulcom. Great show tonight. The show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Faded by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication by KGRA The Planet. Tomorrow night, David Hatcher Childress. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2015 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network and cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without the written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I want everybody to be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.